Welcome to this episode of SDR News Live. I'm Andy McCaskey from SDR News. And a few weeks ago, I had a chance to meet John Arnold with J. Arnold Associates in Toronto. We were at a tech day, an event sponsored by Lifesize in Austin, Texas. And I found it to be very interesting. It was my first introduction to the world of video conferencing as opposed to the world of video. But John, you're an old hand in this sort of thing under the umbrella, I guess you would say, of unified communications. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you thought of that particular Tech Day series?
Well, sure, Andy. Thanks. I appreciate the chance to have this opportunity to speak with you and kind of recap a little bit of what we saw down there. So, yes, I'm an independent analyst, and I've been following the kind of communications environment, mostly around disruptive technologies, since 2001. And kind of going back to the early days of VoIP is where I got most of my exposure to these things. And over time, as we all know, layers keep getting added on to the basic kind of voice telephony environment. And now, of course, we have everything else on top of that, and that's led us to the world of unified communications. You know, video has kind of lived in a parallel world all this time and has gone through a lot of what VoIP is going through. And the same can be said for wireless, by the way, you know, starting out with dedicated purpose-built systems and networks, expensive services, and now, of course, with the IP revolution changing everything, we're now seeing these flavors of these applications in much more cost-effective forms, and also the quality keeps just getting better and better. So just as VoIP has matured to the point where it's pretty much a business-grade alternative to legacy telephony services, we're going through that same change now with video, where we no longer really need that expensive premise-based, MCU styled piece of hardware that sits in a box in a meeting room and is really only used for exclusive purposes. Now the video, capability is democratized over the web and can be used just as effectively on a PC as in a conference room setting. And that kind of brings us to Lifesize. And also for me, in this broader world of unified communications, video has always been a complex part of the overall value proposition, because video is used in different ways than voice. We're getting into this world now where all the talk is about collaboration and working in teams and groups, often from remote and disparate settings. So this is where video's kind of, value proposition starts to get a lot more interesting and compelling and becoming more central to the unified communications concept. Because really, we don't sit around at our desks all day anymore and just hop into a meeting room and get together and talk about things as a group. We're often off in different places, traveling in our cars from our homes, etc. And that experience is getting really hard to make the norm anymore. So video has really become a great proxy for making that very feasible in almost any business environment. Yeah. So it's a really cool aspect of the UC experience, and that's why we're here talking about it.
Well, I think that in your article here in Unified Communications Strategies, you gave an excellent breakdown and developed a 2x2 matrix for positioning of these systems. But I thought one of the most interesting parts was this notion of showing versus sharing. Do you think that this is a useful framework?
Oh, totally. And that was one of the real, I think, for me, was one of the strongest takeaways. It was Simon Dudley who talked about that in our sessions at Lifesize, and I totally agree with that as kind of a key, demarcation point of what you're trying to do with video. I'm more concerned with that aspect of it than the underlying technologies. We know, the codecs are complicated. We know that bandwidth issues can be an issue because we have inconsistent access to bandwidth depending on where we are, and there's so many variables to what drives the experience, especially in a PC-based environment, just like you and I are finding out here, Andy, on our PCs today. But those technologies are largely solvable, but it's really secondary to finding a practical use for it. And I think this showing and sharing is a really good way to look at how companies and individuals get value from video, because the idea of showing is a fairly passive one-way thing, and that can put video into the same bucket as you find WebEx or Citrix, web conferencing or web meeting type of applications. And those environments are very effective for what they are, but they're not interactive and they're not really video centric. They're visual, but they really are about showing things and transmitting information to an audience. The sharing aspect to me is a much more, I think, engaging, higher value use of video in a business environment. And it really speaks to the idea of what we call immersive experience that you hear about from the telepresence people. And I think, in a way, telepresence has kind of created a market for companies like LifeSize. They've made it a more compelling story because telepresence kind of is the ultimate way you can use video, that whole life-size experience that really is the next best thing to being there, but nobody can afford it. So, where companies like LifeSize have come in have really kind of, boxed that down a little bit to a much more affordable offering that doesn't require a room-based system that has to be custom designed and purpose-built, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And make video a much more practical application, but still gives you that really high-quality experience where the sharing environment is very kind of natural and easy to do. And that breaks down a lot of barriers, because once video delivers that way, you don't even think about it. It's not even, you don't even notice it's in the room. You're just communicating. Mm-hmm. And that's when video, I think, has its purest value in that kind of mode.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting to consider is that as you tie in, if you're a manufacturer and you're tying in customers and you're tying in suppliers, everybody kind of has to move along in unison in adopting these sorts of tools. Do you think that, how do you think that's going to be achieved?
Well, there are a couple of issues, and some of that is technology-based. I see some similarities on that level, Andy, to fax. A lot of businesses would probably happily dispense with fax and just get rid of it altogether. But the reason why a lot of companies still have fax today is because their customers still use fax. So it's kind of a necessary capability they have to keep so their customers are happy and makes it easy to do business with them. Now, eventually, we're going to see a little bit of that with video, where if a company is not actively using it, but their customers or suppliers or partners are, that is a reason in itself to get on board with it. Because if you're in a business where you have to collaborate carefully and closely with partners, especially in developing new products, I'm talking about R&D and design issues, that's where video becomes a really great tool to work more closely with those partners to develop products and applications, right, that the market really needs. So I think that's going to be a way to not just help internal communications, but get that ecosystem more tightly engaged, right? So that's where I see video having a lot of value. And in fact, it could be so effective to the point where a company may just install video on the prem of their partners just because it's so much easier. And in fact, if you go back to Halo, one of the early telepresence offerings, that's exactly where it came from. It was a collaboration tool developed for the animation industry, and they just simply had to have it at the different locations as the only way they could really collaborate across distances. So I think there's a lot to be said for where video can go when you think beyond internal communications, to your point of having companies work more closely with their customers and their suppliers.
What do you see as LifeSize greatest strength in this marketplace?
Well, I think they have, they've proven that they have the DNA, kind of what I call like from the bottom up, right? They build. I was very impressed, at that analyst, their tech event where they showed us how they, designed their own lenses. They were in the game early enough where they had to invent a lot of the pieces because they just weren't there. They had to build their own the prototypes, etc. And there's no substitute for doing that. I saw Steve Wozniak speak at the IT Expo a few weeks back, and he's just a treat to watch because he's so heartfelt and just a tinkerer at heart. And when you hear that kind of those kind of values coming from someone who ended up having a hand in creating Apple, you realize that when you have that innate ability to build things from the bottom up, that's the best way to build the right products. You really, when you understand how these things behave, and I've seen that pattern with many very successful companies that have become dominant in their spaces here, in different areas other than video, with the same kind of background, where they've really kind of been early to the game and invented things from the bottom up. And that's the best way to, I think, build products that work best. And I think Lifesize has proven that, and we saw lots of examples of that during the Tech Day. And I came away seeing, this company knows what they're doing in terms of building the right technologies and applications. And I think the bigger challenge, of course, is getting the market to see the value of that. And video is, one of those things. You can't just imagine it. You have to really experience it to get a sense of what it can do. And, it's like when you see HDTV for the first time, right, Andy? You don't go back, right?
Right.
You fall in love with it and you say, I got to have one of those. And that's the same thing that Lifesize would love for their, prospective customers and partners to see.
I think one of the things that I have really enjoyed about the demo that Lifesize has provided is this notion of presence, where you can see people and see that people are available or not available, and be able to connect with them pretty much transparently as the workday moves along, and you need to interact with different folks. Now, John, I know that you had a couple of other blog posts about the Tech Day. If you could maybe point us to that, and then let us know a little bit about where people can go to find more about your work and some of the services that J. Arnold and Associates provide.
Well, sure, Andy, appreciate that. So I would steer people to my website, which is jarnoldassociates.com. I know it's a bit of a long string, but on my website I provide a full overview of what my practice areas are as an analyst, the various ways I work with companies for thought leadership, market research, go-to-market strategy, all these kind of things as an analyst. And there are also links there that go into depth for the types of things that I do, and also where a lot of my writing shows up. So I do have a blog that I've been writing regularly for a long, long time, and that's a separate site unto itself, and that is a good place to find my regular writing. And I also publish in other locations, such as the UC Strategies portal on a regular basis, TMC's IT Internet Telephony Magazine. I have a monthly column there, and my common themes are typically UC related wherever I do most of my writing. So you can find me in various places, and of course I do Twitter. I use that as a means to draw attention to my posts. So that's another way to follow me and see what I'm writing about.
What's your Twitter handle, John?
It is Arnold John, ARNOLDJON.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for taking time from your day to give us a little bit of insight into this world of unified communications. Thanks to you folks for joining us as well. We'll see you next time here on SDR News Live.